Hey everybody, it's Drew Lentz, the wireless nerd, and today I've got a good friend of mine, a mentor, if you will, someone who I've been following for a while, who I got to know, who's got a new project that they're having a lot of fun with in the private network world, in network as a service. So, Mr. Partho, would you please do me a favor and introduce yourself to anyone who may be listening to the Waves podcast?
Hey, Drew, great to be with you. And let me introduce myself by saying I am a fellow wireless nerd.
I love it. I love it.
But, I've been doing wireless stuff for a really long time. Drew and I were having this fun conversation about something esoteric called MMDS that, we all worked on in the late 90s. We've been
Oh
doing this stuff for a
man.
while. But, kind of more recently, a couple of colleagues of mine, and I have started a fun new venture called Ramen. And no, we are not cooking Japanese noodles. We're building some, interesting, useful technology that we think is going to transform the uncorporated enterprise. And, kind of happy to chat more about this, Drew.
Yeah, so your take on it is a little bit different. And first of all, your background lends itself to this. I know, recently you've got a really fun resume. You've got a lot of really neat stuff that you've done, things that you've worked on in the past, and bringing your touch to something like this is great. I know the team. I mean, your team's what a great team. Tell me a little bit about the team that you all have put together, and the purpose for bringing that specific team together with what you're trying to do.
Yeah. So look, like you said, and I'll be a little careful about the bragging, but we have a really wonderful technology team. We have more than 100 US patents, and kind of worked on a lot of seminal wireless technologies, Wi-Fi from its very inception, MIMO, cellular. One of my co-founders, Sanjay, was VP at Qualcomm for 7 years. But I'll tell this a little bit from personal lens also. I was at NVIDIA just before I came to Ramen, and what an amazing company, and what an amazing leader. And within NVIDIA, what you could see a lot of kind of technologies that were going to transform the physical world. And so it was our conviction that if we, kind of looked at workflows in the uncorporated enterprise, that's just kind of a term we made up. It means like warehouses,
I was
factories,
going to ask you what
yards.
you meant by that. So feel free, elaborate on what you mean by the uncarpeted
I just
enterprise.
got tired of saying outdoor workyards, warehouses, factories, shipyards, I'd forget. So I said, I got to keep it simple. I was in Cisco, I was in Aruba. We worked inside for technology that made sense for office buildings. We are outside the four walls.
There
And so
you
that was the
go.
uncarpeted, that was the carpeted enterprise. We're now in the uncarpeted enterprise. So
You
it's just kind
are
of
literally providing connectivity outside of the box, is what you're saying. This is
that's right.
fantastic.
That's right. And so, a big part of it was, it was our conviction that because of the uh, technology adoption in this world, and particularly the idea of using artificial intelligence on massive scale. And artificial intelligence, spans everything from like, basic machine learning, taking data from sensors and
Yeah.
kind of using it, all the way through to, kind of robots and self-driving cars, that entire spectrum.
Hmm.
We thought that there would be a complete transformation. And in order to make all that stuff work, it's stating the obvious, you need to have extremely reliable infrastructure. And that's a big piece of, kind of what we've been working on at Ramen.
One of the things you and I had talked about earlier is your work that you've done in agriculture, and such a fun place. I live in an area that's very ag friendly. I live down here in South Texas, and there's agricultures everywhere. And when you think about the connected world, and you think about artificial intelligence and places that it can help, agriculture is not something that immediately comes to mind, because you think about disparate connectivity. You think about devices and soil sensors and tractors and implements that are so far from being something you would think of as a connected device, until lately, John Deere, for example, coming up with, they've got their whole connected thing that they're doing also. But talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about that, because that connectivity, you're not going to be running fiber optic cables through a field, and you're not going to be running fiber optic cables to all these different sensors to get that data. And that, if you're focusing on that uncarpeted space, that outside of the box space, you really want to make sure that you've got reliable connectivity. And so So what makes yours different than anybody else? I mean, I can go down and I could go buy a an LTE, an eNodeB, and flip it on and have some fun with it, and it's a pain in the butt. What makes Ramen solution different? And talk a little bit about as a service and why you chose to go with the as a service model.
Yeah, all really good questions. So look, kind of from a offering perspective, our focus has been to build something that's easy to consume, that's easy to deploy, that's easy to operate. Now, I
Okay.
realize everyone says that, but you and I know that, you do even like a basic, kind of Wi-Fi deployment, you go back after like, 3 years and, a lot of stuff ain't working. I mean, you have like access points that were installed upside down. There were like, some that are powered off and so forth. So in this world, you talk specifically of agriculture. In this world, our worldview was that we need to make it such that the technology can be number one, deployed very easily.
Yep.
We cannot have like a classical cellular, like, 6 month, do a site survey, do this, do that. It should be like push button, just go out there and deploy, and it's got to work. I mean, the reliability's got to be like, 99 point some number of nines, right?
Yeah.
So this is one. The second thing was, how do you make it such that if you need to, and this goes hand in hand with some of the things we were talking about with AI, wheel in a network and take it out again. So you can almost imagine that, an automated tractor, a robotic tractor, brings in its own network
Yeah.
while it's working on the farms for a day or two.
That's right.
It makes use of the infrastructure, and then boom, it goes to another farm, and the network follows it. Right?
Yeah,
So
and
how do
that's
you do that?
I mean that hits home, right? I live in an area that's very citrus heavy. So you talk about it's not just monitoring the crop when the thing is growing, but it's how much infrastructure do you need when you're actually doing the picking? When there's people out there pulling oranges and grapefruit and lemons and things down from the trees, and what devices do they have to connect, to monitor, to observe, to sort, to do all those other things? Yeah, I mean, wheeling the network out, it's got to be that easy. I hadn't thought about that. That's a great way to think about it.
And back to kind of the question of what you said, how do you get like access? Who's going to run fiber optic cable to the farms and so on? So look, I mean, one of our approaches has been, hey, you know what? Leverage the best technology that's out there. So when we were getting started, we were kind of playing around with Starlink. It had just come out,
Hmm.
and lo and behold, we found that coverage was pretty good all around the U.S. And Drew, you and I have both been through the whole Wi-Fi kind of cycle. And to me, the reason why Wi-Fi was so special, so important, is it was based on licensed spectrum,
Yep,
and essentially anybody could go out and do stuff without
that's
having
right.
to ask for permission.
That's right.
To
Absolutely.
me, this was the big thing.
Yeah.
And now that's possible outdoors. That's possible in these, kind of unincorporated enterprise areas. One of my friends likes to, kind of use the term ubiquitous internet. He
Yep.
goes like, hey, I can do like forest fire detection in the middle of in the middle of like the
Yeah.
Sierra
Yeah.
Nevada. And so back to farms for a moment, what we are able to do is, unlike a classical AT&T or a Verizon model where there's got to be like, 5,000 people living in an area, 10,000, for it to make economic sense to provide cellular coverage, we've appended that entire economic model.
Hmm.
You can, just like with Wi-Fi, deploy service, you know, extremely simply, very cost effectively, and yet at the same time, there's reliability. So for the services that require reliability, it's available when it's required.
Yep.
And for everything else, for which Wi-Fi works, or for which some other technology like LoRaWAN works, use that.
And I have to say, I am jaded I am biased on my opinion of your equipment, because you all shipped me a network in a box. I was out of town. I showed up. It was here on a Saturday. Appreciate the Saturday delivery. Up comes Monday, flipped it open on my kitchen counter, and the hardest part I think was waiting for Starlink to acquire a signal. Right, I think that was the most difficult part of the whole thing, was being patient. But you all really did and this is not a sales pitch, right? You all really did all of the back end work to make sure that it worked exactly the way that it was supposed to. And then I took it and I threw it all back in a box, and I went on top of the rooftop of my local chamber of commerce, and I drove tests to see if it could cover the food truck park and the park where they have a lot of concerts afterwards. And then I was like, why not? I went to an Embassy Suites hotel that a buddy of mine has and jumped up on the roof, and I lit up the entire outside area of a convention center and did drive testing with it. And the worst part about it was walking on the roof in 95-degree temperature. That was like the worst part. But it really did just work the way that it was supposed to. And you and I had this conversation about making it that simple, saying, hey, here's you need it to cover X amount of people. You need a network to cover 40 vendors running point of sale at an event that's happening outside a convention center. You need 200, 300 point of sale devices at a concert, along with video cameras and secured communications between festival organizers. This is something that, as a service, this is what you all are doing. You're saying, hey, you tell us what you need, how big you need to scale it. We're going to ship you the gear. We put the gear out in place. It does what it's supposed to do, put it in a box and ship it back. That's one of the models that you and I had talked about. May not be the model that you work with forever, but that was something where it was like, it really should be that easy to take advantage of this technology. And you all are leveraging, for clarity, you guys are leveraging that CBRS spectrum. The spectrum is a service, so there is a little bit of tuning that you got to do to it to make sure it's signed in FCC and all that other good stuff. But we're entering this era where you all have put this together in an easy to use, easy to consume fashion for the people that need this type of communication. So like I said, I am biased because I've seen it work. and it's awesome. And now, I'm trying to figure out, well, where do I go next? I'm going to take it down to the golf course and see if I can track some golf carts doing stuff. But what markets and what industries do you think are primed to take advantage of network as a service, particularly private LTE or private 5G network as a service? Is there anything that stands out to you?
Well, we think that, as a company, we're focused on, kind of mid-market enterprises where they have the need, but, perhaps not the kind of depth of IT talent that's required to deploy this type of complex technology.
Because
But
it
I
was,
think
to totally interrupt you. I mean, that was, I remember, you talked about MMDS and WiMAX and all that other stuff. But when you started to follow that 3GPP route and you started to go LTE and, TD-CDMA and CDMA and all, it was like, that's a whole different, that's not Wi-Fi. That is a whole different beast. And if you're not comfortable with it, that's like, you can't, those aren't even apples to apples. Those are apples to filet mignons. Like, you can't even compare the two. And you've simplified that. So yeah, totally to interrupt you, finding the group, you were saying that you were finding the groups of people that can take advantage of it, but don't have that either depth of knowledge or don't have that, the ability to jump that learning curve easily. So I'll let you continue.
Exactly.
Sorry, had to interrupt because you're totally right.
And so, kind of food processing, the whole food processing industry and farming is kind of, one example. There's a lot of deployments that we've done in warehouses, kind of across the board. But we've also done, kind of fun deployments. We've done deployments in marinas. We've done deployments in campgrounds. We've done deployments in golf courses. We have like a couple of offers to do deployments on ski slopes. And, it's not just for internet connectivity. A lot of it has to do with, when I say internet connectivity, I mean, it's not just for people to browse the web
Getting
while they're
online.
skiing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's for, skier safety, or it's for, kind of cameras that can kind of, keep an eye on a golf course and make sure that you don't have someone come and, tear up like airways and, cause like tons of damage. So there's, kind of practical kind of use cases there. But I just wanted to go back for a moment also. And, for me, the lesson learned in the Wi-Fi world and what made Wi-Fi so successful, there's 40 billion, 50 billion endpoints. One was unlicensed spectrum. But the second is, if you look at the community of people that deploy Wi-Fi, it's huge.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to go through like a particular certification program or, do this or do that. In the same way, what we think is going to happen, and this is kind of where our technology innovation is focused. We are trying to put our technology in the hands of VARs, in the hands of channel partners, who can essentially use electricians to go out and do the deployment.
Hmm.
And then, a lot of the deployment technology is all centered around auto configuration, cloud controls, and you don't really need to configure a lot of stuff. It just sort of, like you were saying, works.
Yeah.
And so what we see happening is that that increases the velocity of the deployments. And we think that's what's most important because look, seeing is believing. People don't deploy technology because it sounds cool or they want to see, what does it do for me?
Yeah. Does it solve my problem easily?
Exactly. Exactly. And so, just today, we were out at a, kind of a packing facility in Central California. And this is for a very well-known brand, so I'm not going to, name them.
That's fine.
But, they have a very practical use case. They have greenhouses, they grow saplings in them, and someone breaks in and steals the saplings or damages them.
Hmm.
And they need to detect that that's happening. And their idea was, we told them, hey, you can do that with cameras plus AI plus,
Yeah.
wireless connectivity. And they're like, can you do that for us? And we're like, yeah, sure. We're like, you're thinking like what, months? And they're like, no, can you do it in 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's so simple to deploy. And you and I had talked about this also about the use case in education. I just I've got a consulting company called Frontera that's been around for a while, and we did a deployment using similar technology for a school district here in Texas, Nacogdoches ISD, where we looked at doing this for school connectivity and basically range. We're not talking miles and miles of range depending on how you configure it, but we were looking at a mile from the campus, anything around a mile from the school, and being able to deliver the services in-home using an in-home, specifically a category 6 in-home device, antennas, blah blah blah. But then you start to look at what the capability of it is, and it's not just delivering that in-home service. Then it was, well, wait a minute, if you're covering my whole campus, then that means I can monitor my call boxes and my blue light, stuff. I can put video cameras and surveillance. I can put traffic sensors. I can do all these different, I can monitor my solar panel, array that's in the back. I can put the stuff on the roof. When you start to open up the opportunity for people to have that ubiquitous connectivity, it's really, really cool because they start to think about what they can get connected. When you go, yeah, if you can connect anything, what would you connect? And it really starts to get their mind going. And I think part of that also has to do with how simple it is, because if it's a pain in the ass to get into, nobody's going to want to do it. So before I let you go, what I do want you to talk about, because it leads right into this, is why the name Ramen? What's the story there?
We get a lot of that. One of my co-founders, Sanjay Kasturia, when he was in grad school, lived on ramen, and in, his mind, this is something that's good for you. It's quick, it's easy, and it's affordable.
That's awesome, and I think you guys have done a bang up job with that. I've enjoyed it. I'm as what I'm doing here in South Texas towards the end of May. So depending on when this airs, towards the end of May, I'm going to be driving around to a bunch of really disconnected areas down here in South Texas, south of San Antonio, where I live, and so we're going to hit Dilley and Carrizo Springs and Eagle Pass and some of these areas where connectivity isn't the first thing that comes to mind. These are markets that are largely unseen by whichever carriers are in place. And granted, Starlink gives you the ability to get into it, but they're not dispersing the signal or distributing the signal in any way. And I always think about water. I think about sprinklers. I think about water lines. And, you can run a water main to a city, but that doesn't mean that you're running sprinklers to water the field that you're supposed to. So making sure that this is easy for people to connect to, I'm going to take that story to the street. We're going to put the screws to this. I mean, you sent me the kit so I could have some fun with it. So we're really going to have some good times there. I do have to say that your software is it's really easy to use, and it looks great, and it feels great, and it works the way that it's supposed to, which makes my life easier. It allows me to just go demo it. But the fact that you didn't just do that for me to go demo, the fact that you're doing that for the customers is really cool, because whether they're administrating it or they're paying someone else to do it, or they're just buying it 100% as a service or using it as a service, I think that you are starting to bridge that gap where you can get that private LTE, that private 5G into the same realm as Wi-Fi, making it easy enough to use. So that's awesome, man. I'm a huge, that. I mean, this is part of the problem when you're interviewing friends. I'm a huge fan. You're also a friend, so it's really cool. I'm genuinely excited about your product and about what you're doing. Before I say our sign offs, what is there anything else that you want to share? I mean, is there what's next for you guys? I mean, you're still relatively young as a company goes. You've got a hell of a team. I guess there's not a lot you could talk about because you're still in that. You guys are like right in that upward trajectory right now. But what's coming up in the next couple of months for you all?
Well, look, I mean, we were laser focused on customer insertions and, kind of getting that done. And I know that sounds a little kind of, salesy, but it's important, right?
Yes, of course.
Not just as a startup, not just for financial reasons, but also proof of the pudding and the eating, right? I so appreciate the fact that you kind of took our solution, kicked it in the tires, gave us great feedback. And, look, I mean, when we have 1,000 people do that and tell us it all works, well, that's when it really works, right?
Yeah.
So this is number one. But second, going back to kind of the vision of the company and what we set out to do, again, we think that AI is going to be transformative for this physical world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it AI interpreting the physical world,
Yeah.
and AI centers around data. AI is useless without data.
That's right.
Data comes from sensors. Sensors are cameras, audio sensors, and so forth. And what we are building is, kind of the infrastructure to collect all that data, to process it in real time, and then to kind of, essentially turn it around. And there's lots of cool use cases and, kind of applications that you'll see begin to roll out in the course of not the next 2 months, but in the course of the next 2 to 3 years. Some of them we're deploying at customers as we speak. And here's a really simple one. At one of our customers, today they have people stand by and they have these automated lines. And if a line stops, they have to have a human being go out and reset the line. And we've just automated that entire process using cameras and AI.
That's
So
awesome.
these are some of the practical things that we're working on. But look, I also want to kind of say thank you, Drew. I mean, it's been kind of great knowing you and kind of a lot of the wireless kind of through over the last 15, 20 years. And, I really admire what you've been able to do in terms of, kind of proliferate wireless access and, onward and upward, as they say.
Well, that's what we're here
more
for,
of it.
man. We're industry advocates, and so what I would do is, I know there's probably people that have listened to this and said, I could totally use that. If this is something that they could totally use, can you tell me just real quick, how would someone go about getting in touch with you if they're interested? I mean, what's the best way to? I mean, WhatsApp or an email or a text message or website? What's the easiest way for someone to get in touch with you if they want to kick the tires on this?
Look, we are a startup. We are extremely unbureaucratic. All you need to do is send an email to sales@rameninc.com, or if you prefer, come to the website and there's a button, click on it, and we'll get right back in touch with you. And I assure you that we will respond in a day or two.
Yeah.
And we'll follow up and make sure that we talk to you. And if our technology is the right fit for your problem, we'll find a way, just like we did with Drew, to get something out to you really quickly so that you can kick the tires and figure it out on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I sent you a message and you called me from an agriculture festival, so that was kind of fun. But also, if anyone listening needs some information, some direction on this, or if you want to see it or get firsthand use case, please let me know. Feel free to reach out to me. If you're listening to this, you probably know how to get a hold of me. If not, drew@drewlentz.com or find me at Wireless Nerd. I'll be happy to introduce you over to the team. But for now, I think, Partho, it's great. I feel like I talk to you every week, man. I enjoy our conversations, and I'm so excited for you. I love you give me that whole feeling of being back in the startup game. So it's so much fun to listen to in a technology that is adjacent to Wi-Fi, but also that powers things, that provides that connectivity and gets everything going the way that it needs to in order to process the data to get to AI. So that being said, I'm going to stop recording here in just a second, but I do appreciate your time, Partho. Thanks for joining us. Any last words, any last comments before I punch the stop button?
No, a big thank you. Really fun being on this podcast, and I love listening to it, and really great fun to be on it for the first time.
Awesome, man. Awesome. All right. We'll see you soon.